And welcome to Thursday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. It's presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. So glad you could join us for the next hour. It's been an exciting week around here, and Matt Citak is joining me, Paul Dottino, for this program. We invite you to call us at 201-939-4513, 201-939-4513. As always, if you don't catch the show live, you can catch it on all your favorite podcast networks, as well as giants.com/podcasts and all of your podcast platforms. Now, the first thing we want to do today is get a little reaction to not only the Russell Wilson presser yesterday. He did sign his contract with the Giants. He is official. He is here. He will be the Giants' starting quarterback in September. And we want to get some reaction from you fans on his presser. Matt has not been here in the seat since Jameis Winston also came in. So since you last spoke to the fans, two quarterbacks, not just one, two quarterbacks.
A lot has changed since I was last on
Indeed.
Friday afternoon.
Indeed. So that has happened. So we're going to get Matt's quick take on that, and you guys can certainly respond to him as well. Then later on in the show, at about 1:15, about 45 minutes in, we're going to talk to Brent Hubbs, who is the Tennessee Volunteers football radio analyst, and he's going to tell us about some really good prospects. Tennessee's got a handful of them now that they believe are going to go probably in the first 4 rounds or so of the draft. So we're going to have that all coming up in the next hour. But first of all, let's kick it over here to Matt for just a second, because I want to get your take on the two QBs before we do any actual Wilson press conference reaction.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to start anyway. So I was last on Friday afternoon, and obviously since then, Jameis Winston reportedly agreed to terms. Russell Wilson officially signed a contract. So the quarterback room went from just Tommy DeVito to now those three guys. And to me, and I mean, I know I've seen this take all over the place, so not going to pretend like it's 100%, original or just me, but I think that signing these two guys, or agreeing to terms with one and signing Russ, was just such a smart move by the front office, because it just alleviates all of the pressure to forcing a quarterback at the pick at number 3. I think now you can still take the quarterback at number 3. If Shedeur Sanders is there and you want the quarterback and you want him, he's your top guy, by all means take him. To go from, just Tommy DeVito in the quarterback room to a quarterback room where Tommy DeVito would be, at least going into the offseason program, the number 4 quarterback, obviously is a drastic improvement from where it was just a week ago. So signing the two of them, or bringing those two veterans in, you're adding just a ton of experience to the room. Guys that have been in the league, both of them for a decade, Russ for more than a decade, have been leaders of their teams. They're both known to be very good, strong locker room presences. That's what this team needs. This team is one of the youngest in the NFL. You look at almost any position group on this team, it's a lot of young guys. You need veteran leadership, and both of these guys bring that. They bring the ability to throw the ball down the field, which is something the Giants haven't had in the quarterback room in years now. That a guy that they can, trust to reliably throw accurately down the field. And Russell Wilson has been one of the best in the NFL in doing that. And we know Jameis Winston is surely not afraid to throw the ball all over the field, whether it's a 5-yard slant or a 50-yard bomb down the field. He's not afraid to sling it.
Indeed.
So I think that this signing the both of them, and for the reported numbers of, again, reportedly around $14 million base salary, I think is just an absolute steal. And the other numbers that are being reported are with incentives, and truly, I think in an ideal world, Russell Wilson hits the full incentive number, because that means he's playing extremely well and the Giants are winning football games, probably making it to the playoffs. I don't know. We don't know exactly what the incentives are tied to, but in order for him to reach it, that can only mean good things for the Giants offense and for the team overall. So I am very on board with bringing these two veteran quarterbacks in. I still believe the Giants will add a quarterback at some point in the draft. I think now, you have a little more freedom to potentially, take Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter at 3 and then focus on one of your day 2 picks for the quarterback position. So overall, very happy with these moves. I think it alleviates a lot of the stress and anxiety that I can't speak for anyone else, at least for me, that I had about the quarterback room up until a week ago. So.
Join the club.
Yeah.
I want to go into the flashback machine for just a second. When the season ended last year and the Giants had struggled and crawled to the finish line with only 3 wins, and we knew they were going to have to rebuild the quarterback room. I mean, that was no secret. It was the top priority. Everybody understood that.
Every decision maker straight up said it.
So the question was going to become, how do you do it? What ingredients are you going to grab to reconstruct the room? I don't know that any of us thought that they would necessarily get a tier 1 guy as part of that mixture because tier 1 guys are expensive. Now, Cousins was obviously part of that tier 1 grouping if he was going to be available. Obviously, Rodgers was going to be part of that tier 1 grouping, and so was Wilson. Those 3 guys were going to be part of the tier 1 grouping. There was obviously some trade winds going around also that Derek Carr might wind up becoming available off of the Saints.
Stafford as well.
And Stafford wasn't as much at the end of the season being talked about. It was only a little after that.
That's fair.
Right?
Yep.
So what I'm saying is, when the season ended, I guess you could say Wilson, Rodgers, Cousins, and possibly Carr were the 4 veteran quarterbacks who had big names who you thought might be on the tier 1 shelf. And then as time developed, Atlanta started talking about, we're not going to deal Cousins. We're going to keep him. And so now, okay, maybe there could be 3. And then you started hearing rumblings out of New Orleans. No, we made a change in our coaching staff. We're going to keep Carr. Okay, now you got 2 tier 1 guys. Now, while this is happening, the Rams put out, well, now we're not so sure we're going to be able to hold on to Stafford. He's going to be available. And we're going to let him talk to people about making a deal. So now we're back up to 3 tier 1 guys. Just think about how this whole story changed and twisted and went around different curves. And then ultimately, the Rams decide they're going to keep Stafford, and now you're back down to 2 tier 1 guys again, with the Falcons still insisting that they're going to keep Cousins, even though nobody seems to believe them. Okay. And so what do the Giants do as this road is twisting and turning? They go after the top guy of them all, Matthew Stafford. That doesn't work because the Rams pull him back. And then the Giants pivot and say, okay, we're going to go after the other guys on the tier 1. When the season ended last year, I really didn't think they were going to be shooting for a tier 1 guy because I thought that the expense would scare them away. I don't know if you felt the same, but I thought tier 1 was going to be too pricey for them.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting the Giants to go out and sign, a starting quarterback making over $30 million a year. Like, that's why the one guy you haven't mentioned, Sam Darnold, I do think in this offseason, he was part of that tier 1.
That's a good point.
But I just never expected.
Not as his resume was not as deep as the other guys.
100%. But in terms of how, I guess, the league was looking at him moving forward, he was definitely on that tier 1. But I never, even for a second, expected the Giants to be in the Sam Darnold sweepstakes because I agree with you. I didn't think they were ever going to spend that much money on a starting quarterback, given where they are in the direction of the franchise. With Daniel Jones's dead cap hit still on the books this year with the number 3 pick, I didn't think going out and spending over $100 million on a quarterback was ever really that feasible, to be honest. So yeah, then as you mentioned, it brought us to the quarterbacks that, it seemed to come down to, which was Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. And even before the start of free agency, if you told me that the Giants would be looking at those 2 guys, I would be expecting the Giants to have to pony up a good amount of money.
Too expensive,
for
right?
either one of them.
Too expensive.
So the one thing I will say is despite, having about 2 weeks of anxiety about the quarterback position, it seems like Joe Schoen played it the right way because he got Russell Wilson to agree to a deal that certainly seems like below market. I mean, just look at the numbers on the deal that Justin Fields got from the Jets. Who he signed, within the first 24 to 48 hours of free agency.
Correct.
And he got the reported numbers are for Fields 2 years, $40 million with half of that guaranteed, which at the very least is double what Russell Wilson is reportedly getting from the Giants. And let's not forget, Justin Fields was benched for Russell Wilson last year. The Steelers were a playoff team, making a run towards the playoffs, a postseason appearance, and Mike Tomlin, one of the most accomplished coaches in the NFL, decided to go with Russell Wilson all season over Justin Fields. And Justin Fields, I get he's younger, and an argument could be made that maybe his upside is a little bit higher given his athleticism and his youth, but nonetheless, the facts are the facts. Russell Wilson started over Fields once Russell Wilson was healthy, and yet Fields got crazy amount money more.
Wilson won more games than Fields did as a starter last year as well, although, again, I don't like the one-loss record of starting quarterbacks. But the point being that Russell Wilson, the way this whole thing developed and finally played out, wound up coming in for a very, very much unlike Tier 1 price. As you said, the numbers are mind-boggling to think that you got a Tier 1 quarterback for a tremendous discount. I did the number check on over the cap. This year, if he makes his $21 million with all of the incentives, which, again, you don't expect a guy to hit every one, right? He would only be the 20th highest paid starting quarterback in the league this year. Now, that's going to change when Purdy gets his
but also
new deal.
Doesn't it, the way it works is those incentive numbers would also not even count towards this year's cap. It goes towards next year's.
Well, it depends on how it's all worded. I haven't seen
Gotcha.
I haven't seen all the specifics.
Yeah, of course.
None of us do.
No, of course.
But just take it at face value as a whole, without knowing the details, we'll just assume as much as possible he could earn. He'd still be the 20th highest paid starting quarterback. And I'll be frank with you. I know he's on the tail end of his career. Can you give me 19 quarterbacks better than Russell Wilson if I asked you to go through the list? I told John yesterday, I think he's probably about 16. I don't think he's 20. He's probably right there, right around the cutting point for the middle.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So Joe Schoen, from the time the season ended and the expectations of what they might have available to them in terms of money, in terms of draft capital, in terms of making a deal, in terms of leeway or range. Heck, I didn't think Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers, either one, would take anything less than a multi-year contract. Now, I didn't talk to their agents. I don't do that. I don't have conversation with agents. It's one of the things I avoid. I never in a million years thought that Rodgers would take a one-year deal, and I certainly didn't think that Russell Wilson at 36 years old would take a one-year deal, because not only do I believe both of those guys think they have some gas left, but I also felt that from the team perspective, you'd have to jimmy with the cap some. And if you give them a 2-year deal or a trigger to get out in the third year, at least you can spread out some of that money. Never did I think that Joe Schoen would be able to get Russell Wilson at the bargain price that he got him at, so that he could actually give him a 1-year deal and swallow the number. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I was just looking. Last year, when the salary cap was, how much lower? 30 million lower, close to that. Gardner Minshew got a 2-year, $25 million deal with $15 million guaranteed from the Raiders. Last year, again, where the salary cap was lower than this year, and the Giants got Russell Wilson, who is obviously far more accomplished than Gardner Minshew, for less money. Less money overall, less money guaranteed. Obviously, if he hits the incentives, then he could hit the Minshew numbers or top them. But as it stands right now, less money than Gardner Minshew last year. That is crazy to me.
So, again, as Matt just said earlier, plaudits to Joe Schoen. He has done a marvelous job. He has signed or re-signed a total of about, 17 or 18 free agents during this first few weeks of free agency. He's been the busiest general manager in the NFL. He's made the team better. He's done it in a variety of positions, okay? He hasn't just even concentrated on one or two spots. He's done it all over the field and also got the biggest puzzle that he had to get, and that was a veteran starting quarterback who can win games. What an incredible offseason Joe Schoen has had to this point. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it will translate to a ton more wins. We don't know the answer to that. But right now, when you look at the blueprint and you look at the puzzle pieces that he's put together, he has done a really terrific job, and waiting out free agency to finally get the starting QB, and again, also got himself an experienced backup who's won games in the league before. Waiting it out turned out to be the best move of all. He didn't jump. He didn't sweat. He just stayed back and said, okay, this will all come to fruition when it needs to. And he did it. So great for Joe Schoen. And right now, the Giants, I would think, are probably finished tinkering with the roster for the moment.
I would think, but then again,
you never know, right?
You really never know. I mean, I guess I wouldn't expect between now and the draft, I wouldn't expect any, big signings. There obviously might be, some minimum signings, guys making close to the minimum around that. I wouldn't expect any big time additions.
They don't have it. I don't think they got the money anymore to go for a big time guy anyway.
Teams always have the ability. Any team has the ability to restructure contracts. There are some contracts on the Giants, on the cap right now that Joe Schoen could move some money around in order to free up more cap space. Guys like Dexter Lawrence, Andrew Thomas, guys that are going to
we know the guys he could go to.
Yeah, the guys that are going to be here for the next year, 2 years, 3 years. So,
all right, I want to get to the calls in just a second. I'm going to hold you up one more minute, folks. Chris from Rochester, you're going to be first on the program. I just wanted to get one key point from Russell Wilson's pressers yesterday that you found the most intriguing.
Oh, the most intriguing. Well, the thing that stood out to me is he went out of his way to specifically name so many of his new teammates throughout his entire press conference. He spoke to the media for 20, 25 minutes, and he mentioned, just about every offensive playmaker, all the receivers. He was very complimentary about Theo Johnson. It is very clear that he is very excited to have him as his number one tight end. He even went out and, complimented and called out some of the defensive players and the defensive additions, Paulson Adebo, Javon Holland. He really went out of his way. It was clear that he had studied the roster. It wasn't like he just sort of, made a snap decision. Oh, the, Giants are the only team that want me. I'm going to go sign with them. It was clear that he wants to be here. He wants to be the starting quarterback for the New York Giants. He's excited about the team that has been built around him now. And yeah, I've been here. This is coming up to my 7th season. Sat in on basically every single press conference that has happened since the last 7 years. And I can't remember a guy coming in as a new free agent addition and name dropping so many of his new teammates the very first time he talks to the media.
Okay, my number one takeaway was a two-parter, and it kind of builds off of what you said. He specifically went out of his way a couple of times to mention Jalen Hyatt. Yep. He was very excited about Jalen Hyatt's speed. And as we all know, Russell Wilson has a great deep ball. They call it the moon ball. That's what he does. Obviously, his conversation about the passing game started with Malik Neighbors. But he went out of his way to talk about Jalen Hyatt. Very excited about throwing the ball to him. Maybe this is the year that Jalen Hyatt unlocks his potential and becomes an important part of this passing game. I don't know that yet. I hope it's true for the Giants' sake. But for Russell Wilson to single him out, I thought that was kind of a cool thing. And as part 2 to that, kind of 1B, he also was very specific in the interview he did with John Schmelk, that's also on Giants.com, when John asked him about why do receivers, like working with you so much, and what is it about the moon ball? Well, look, you guys know I was a big Daniel Jones guy, but as the season went on last year and the play started to deteriorate and the inconsistencies were becoming more the norm, Russell Wilson came right out and said, ball placement. He is very, very big on ball placement. That is a huge priority for him. It's not just making the ball catchable. He said it's about putting the ball where the receiver wants it. Well, that in turn may lead to a lot more yak yardage. And as we know, the Giants' yak yardage has not been good. If they can get good ball placement and these receivers to do what they're supposed to do, you're talking about a big increase in yak yardage, which then also means a whole lot more points.
Yeah, just in terms of the yak. I mean, obviously, there's Malik Neighbors who can get the yak. He can make contested catches. He can do it all. But Russell Wilson also went out of his way to compliment Wan'Dale Robinson, who I think, to the point that you were just making about ball placement, I feel like he could be the biggest benefactor of having Russell Wilson as the quarterback, because I don't know how many times the last couple of years we've seen Wan'Dale Robinson wide open on a cross route, but the ball thrown kind of behind him where he has to slow down, make the catch, and by the time he gets his speed back going, the defender's on top of him tackling him. Now he is a guy that's going to lead him on those cross routes and is going to place the ball perfectly where it needs to be, where he can make that catch in stride and continue to just take it upfield. I mean, he called Wan'Dale Robinson basically a running back when he has the ball in his hands.
Mm-hmm.
And, not too many wide receivers really fit that bill. And Wan'Dale Robinson certainly is one. Russell Wilson called that out and, seemed very excited to have him as one of his receivers.
Dable's offensive philosophy contains a very large segment of yak yardage stuff. That's what he preaches.
Yep.
And the Giants weren't getting that. Well, this is a guy who's going to help get them that. So I do think that Wilson's going to have a dramatic impact on this team in 2025. All right, folks, that's what we've got for you there. Now we're going to go to the phones. Coming up at about 1:15, which is in about 20 minutes or so, we will talk about the Tennessee Volunteers and their prospects. But right now we go to Chris in Rochester. You're first on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hello.
Hey, guys. How's it going, man?
Good to talk to you.
Man, I can't tell you how happy I am that Aaron Rodgers isn't coming here.
Okay.
You guys see the difference? Like, imagine the locker room with Rodgers in there, and now after hearing Russell Wilson, he's kind of got me freaking stoked. But I was calling because this is why I wanted Wilson, because Neighbors, his stop and go, I think that's the thing that I'm most excited about with the matchup, with Neighbors and Wilson, is he can, go full speed and act like he's going to sit, and then, somehow explode out all in one motion. It's amazing. It looks weird. So I think that's going to create a lot of points. So it's going to go to the defense. The defense is going to be, most important. So this is the plan I wanted to say to you, Paulie, and I know you're not a big Milroe guy. But, I mean, if we can get him in the third, at 99 or something, and have him sit for a year, I think that Dable will get the throwing out of him along with his legs, But I want at 3, so this was the plan that I was thinking. So at 3, if Ward isn't there, then we trade back to 7 if they're interested in Sanders or whatever.
Okay.
Then if we can pull that off.
What do you need to get
7.
to make that deal, though? What is your price?
Man, so that's it. I'm not really good with all that. That's just kind of like a hope and just like an idea.
Okay.
If that's do like Sanders and they want to come up to 3, I would like to get their second round pick. What is it, 37 or 38?
So you want to trade with the Jets at 7?
Yep. Trade with the Jets. Go back to 7, get their 37 in the second round, then draft either
Isn't their second round pick at 42?
I'm not really sure, Paulie. I was just going off of 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah,
7,
no.
So
Take a look at the official draft order on NFL.com. If you're talking about Vegas, they're at 6 and they're at 37. You could talk to them if those are the 2 picks you want.
So they got Geno. I'm thinking that the Jets got Fields, so they might still be in play to get Sanders. So let's just say that we can pull this off and we get their second rounder. Okay, so they go up to 3, we drop back. I want to get Ashton Janty. And if he's not there, then get Mason Graham. And if he's not there, then we keep trading back, load up, see if we can get a couple first.
You've been busy staying up at night, haven't you?
I just
You're very ambitious. You're very ambitious, for sure.
Yeah. So you don't think that we can pull off one or two trades within the first 18 of the first round?
Look, are trades possible? Of course. I mean, we've seen Joe Schoen is not afraid to trade up. He's not afraid to trade back when it comes to the draft.
Right.
You know, he's very active. The first two drafts that he was the GM here, he was extremely active going both ways. So is it possible? Sure. But for starters, for me, if I'm moving down to 7 and trading out of the ability to take, you know, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, or Shedeur Sanders, you know, one of those 3, I need that team's first round pick next year. I'm not doing that deal. If I'm going to be taken out of the sweepstakes for all those, and I'll throw Mason Graham in there too, because I would love, you know, I've said I wouldn't mind trading down to like 5 and then picking up Mason Graham there. But so down to 7, you're most likely missing out. You are missing out on, you know, Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, most likely Mason Graham. Ashton Genty could be there, but those 3 guys who are considered to be pure talent-wise probably the 3 best players in this draft, they're not going to be there at 7. So if I'm doing that, you have to give me your first-round pick next year. Then if the Jets are willing to do that at 7, then I'm all ears. Because if they're not, the Giants are not going to attack the quarterback position in the first round of this year's draft, and, you know, instead attack it somewhere on day 2 or even day 3 maybe, then I want to stockpile draft capital in next year's draft.
Correct.
In case the Giants fall in love with a quarterback or 2 next year and want to move up to get their guy in next year's draft.
Got to do it that way, Chris. That's the only way it makes sense.
So I like that. That is in my plan. I was going to say try to get the first for next year, but I also want, like, the meat of this draft is from like the second round and third round. That's where a lot of the value is. So I was saying if we could, you know, maybe get 2 or 3 of those picks and maybe get a first, or just 2 and a first. But what do you guys, in this defense that's coming up next year, why do you guys like Abdul Carter outside more than you like Mason Graham at 3 tech? I feel like getting Mason Graham would create more problems now that we got Adebo and we got Holland back there. I just feel like Mason Graham would cause more problems than Abdul Carter.
For starters, I think Paul and I both would happily take either one of them on the Giants defense.
Yes.
Like, and if the Giants ended up with either one of those 2, we would both be extremely happy.
We are the 2 guys who do this program who like Mason Graham the most.
Yeah. I love Mason Graham. Yeah. I just don't know if I would take him I probably would not take him at 3. I would, you know, in an ideal world, if the Giants decide, you know, they don't want to draft Shedeur Sanders at 3, or Shedeur Sanders is not there. Let's say the quarterbacks go 1 and 2, and the Jaguars at 5 come calling saying, we want to move up to number 3 for whoever it is. We'll offer you our 2nd round pick this year and maybe our 2nd round pick next year to move up those 2 slots. I would love to do that, because then you're still most likely going to get Mason Graham at 5. You get that extra early day 2 pick that you were talking about. And you get some good draft capital in next year's draft in case you want to move around next year.
Chris, we got to run, but I will add this if you hold on to listen to us after you hang up. I will say this. In terms of how far down you want to go, after those 2 premier guys, Hunter and Carter, there may be more than 1 or 2 teams who think Mason Graham is the 3rd best player in this draft. So the danger if you move down to 7, it's not only if someone ahead of you takes him, but somebody might even try to move up to get him. He's that good.
Yeah. 100%.
I mean, he is a real blue chipper. So you got to be real careful. If you really like Mason Graham that much, and we do, you got to be careful how far you're going to go down.
I don't think he's getting past 5.
I don't think so either.
I really don't.
I would be very surprised. He's that terrific. Now, the one argument, Chris, that kind of works against you a little bit, and I don't necessarily go for this because I'm all about best player available. I really am. But if you want to put the positional stuff in the equation, there are so many really, really good defensive tackles.
That is true.
That you're going to be able to get. 2nd round, 3rd round. We have since the combine, we've got guys telling us there are 4th round defensive tackles who are going to get starting reps in this league.
Yeah, I mean, I've said on the show multiple times that a couple of weeks ago, Daniel Jeremiah put out a tweet saying he has 24 defensive tackles with starter grades this year, compared to 12 last year, twice as many. 24. So yeah, some of them are honestly going to last to that, that pick 105 in the early fourth round. Some of them are going to be there for that pick.
All right, and there are not that many similarly rated edge rushers in this draft.
Well, edge rusher is probably the deepest.
There are
in this
some
draft.
defensive tackle and running back and tight end are all deeper than edge rusher.
It's funny you say that, because literally for today's Giants Now, the article I put together every single day for Giants.com, Lance Zierlein from NFL.com put out his rankings of the draft's best position groups.
Okay.
And he had edge at number 1.
That's shocking.
With running back as a close second, and then interior defensive line third.
Nobody said that at the combine. That's,
John has said that to me on the show before.
He
as well.
may have said that to you on the show, but none of the experts at the combine said that on our programs, and we were out there all week.
Regardless, I would say, even if you were going to call them similar,
it's a good edge
and defensive tackle. I think defensive tackle might have more top tier talent, but edge rusher is at the very least, I think, as deep as defensive tackles. There are going to be some very talented players that go on, again, round 3, round 4 edge rushers that may not step in day 1 and be full-time starters that, excel Pro Bowl level, but at the very least will be rotational guys that are going to put up sack numbers early on in their careers.
I'm going to stick with the fact that within 5 years we will find out that this was a better defensive tackle draft. I'm sticking with that.
I would not be surprised at all. I'm just saying the edge rushers are very good and deep as well.
Well, it's a good draft overall, to be honest.
If you need an edge rusher, defensive tackle, or running back,
but if you need a primo guy, like you said, I will agree with you on this. The edge rushers, there are not enough primo guys. There were some guys who are good, but not enough primo guys.
You got one primo guy.
That's Carter.
Yeah.
Okay, we agree on that. We found equal footing on this one. Okay, we go back to the lines. Jessica in Connecticut, you're next on the show. Hello.
Hi, Paul. Hi, Matt.
Hello.
How are you? Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
So I'm calling in because as a Giants fan, I have a little bit of a pep in my step with this Russell Wilson signing. I was in a restaurant and some random guy walked in with Giants gear, and I was like, "We just signed Wilson," and he was pumped too. I called in a couple weeks ago, and I was, Aaron Rodgers was killing me with his decision making. And I'm feeling really excited about Wilson. I watched his interview on the app yesterday, and I'm pretty impressed with, what he said. I agree with you, Citak, what he said about, bringing some, leading the room. And I'm excited to see what kind of explosive plays he could bring out of Malik Neighbors. And then that brings me to the draft. I'm really, really, really hoping that they pass on Shedeur. Nothing against him, but I would prefer Carter or Hunter that could really bring some change to the Giants. I'm excited. I feel like maybe we could have a decent season. I'm not saying we're going to go to the Super Bowl. That would be awesome. But I've been disappointed for 2 years.
Well, Jessica, here's what I will say in terms of Sanders. I talked to Mark Johnson, the play-by-play radio voice of the Colorado Buffaloes, last night. Extensive conversation with him. And he said that in recent days, apparently, Deion Sanders, Shedeur's dad, has had some very good conversations with the Browns. And it seems like there's a lot of trade winds or at least whiffs in the air out in Colorado that Cleveland is starting to get a little more momentum in terms of the Shedeur Sanders bandwagon. So you may not have to worry about him being even available.
That's what I'm hoping for. I mean, I listen to you guys every day and how you talk about Hunter being a generational player. I just don't want to see them pass on. I think that I'm feeling pretty good about all these signings.
Well, you should. The Giants have certainly improved themselves. Jessica, thank you so much for calling, and please
have a great day, guys.
You too. Give us another ring. Jay in Phoenix, you're next on the program. Hello.
Hey, guys. when this offseason ended, and this is kind of a message for my fellow fans, all of us were disappointed. It was embarrassing. It was not a great year. But as soon as ownership decided to keep Shane and Dable, it was like, okay, what are you going to do? And like you guys summed it up nicely in the beginning, I've been nothing but excited about what they've done. I love the 4 guys that they brought in, and Adebo, Holland. I love Golston. It's going to be really fun and creative how they're going to use him. And I love that Darius Slayton's back. Then all the depth pieces. So great. I'm feeling really good. Quarterback's been a little bit scary. And then all of a sudden, boom, we get Jameis Winston. And just listen to some of the people calling into your guys' show, other New York's sports talk area shows and things like that. Just listening to the frustration and the craziness around quarterbacks. Like, what did we expect? But what bringing in Russell Wilson, which I'm optimistic, and then with Jameis as well, is we now are not desperate going into the draft. Because you think about all these scenarios that have to happen, right? First of all, if you want Cam Ward, the Titans got to be willing to trade. Well, what if they're not? Then you got to make, if you see Shador as somebody you need to draft high, you got to make sure the Browns will take him, or somebody jumps you to take him, or the Browns take a trade to take, and then you're stuck. What if that doesn't work out? And then you talk about Dart. Well, who says he's going to be there late in the first and you're going to trade back in? Who says that's going to work? And so on and so forth down the line. I think both of these guys coming on gives the Giants the flexibility to do whatever they need to make the team better. Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Mason Graham, I'm with you guys. I love that. And then we can find a quarterback later. The other thing, too, is just let's say you do bring in Shador, because I've heard people say, well, we bring in Shador, and why do we have Jameis? Well, we know that Russell Wilson's an older quarterback. He might get hurt. Jameis is a good backup to come in, and you don't have to force Shador on the field, or a younger quarterback. Or if you think Shador's already passed Jameis in training camp, you trade Jameis, and you pick up some draft capital at the deadline or even before. So I'm optimistic about what they've done. Choosing that route versus, we didn't pick your superstar quarterback that we could have gotten free agency, which frankly didn't exist. So anyways, no real question. Just wanted to say that. Go Giants.
Appreciate the call, Jay. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, I mean, look, as I said to open, I think signing Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston puts the Giants in a situation where, and this is where you want to be every year going into the draft, you can just take the best player, the top player on your board when the clock is ticking. There's no pressure to force the quarterback now because you have 2 very reliable guys that at the very least can take you through 2025. Not to mention Tommy DeVito, who has started and won games for this team as an undrafted free agent the last 2 years. So the pressure is off now. And look, Shador Sanders, when the Giants are on the clock, if Cam Ward goes 1 and let's say Abdul Carter goes 2, there's a chance that Shador Sanders is the number 1 player on the board, on the Giants board, in which case you make the pick and you allow him to sit for the entire or half the year and learn behind these 2 NFL veterans that have a track record of getting it done.
I'm going to say right now, as the Giants roster stands today, the 3 most important positions that I hope they address before training camp starts. Defensive line, okay, and they can get versatile guys that maybe be able to play some tackle and 3 technique and defensive end like Golston. Defensive line, I'd love to see them add another corner, and I'd love to see them add another interior offensive lineman. Those, for me, are the 3 spots that I really would like to. I'm gonna pin you down now. Give me the 3 spots where you would like to see the Giants get somebody else who can play before training camp starts.
I agree on 2 of the 3 that you said. I mean, I've stood up here, I don't even know how many times, and talked about how much I love the defensive tackles in this draft. And I want to add one probably on day 2. Again, unless the Giants move down a couple of slots and can get Mason Graham, I'm more looking at one of those guys on day 2. I agree that I do think adding an interior offensive lineman as well would be very beneficial. Even if the Giants do eventually have plans to move Evan Neal inside, which we don't know at this point, even if that is the plan, I would still want to add another guy because as we've come to learn, you just can't have enough offensive linemen.
No.
You want to have depth, guys that you can rely on. If the worst case scenario happens and all the starters get hurt, you want to have guys that can at least hold down the fort.
Oh, competition is always a good thing, too.
Yes, 100%. So I agree on those two. The third one, it's...
Corner doesn't make you sweat.
I mean, after the last couple of years, I guess, yeah, I do like the group of corners that the Giants currently have. I mean, with your starting three being Paulson Adebo, Deontay Banks, Drew Phillips in the slot, and then you have guys like, like Cordell Flott as a backup now. You have some depth now. Of course, I would love to add one, but I wouldn't mind if it's, one of the day 3 picks, which that's not a guy you're probably going to...
I didn't say what order or where I wanted them.
But
I simply said get somebody else in here who can play by opening of camp.
But what do you mean by play, though? Like, I agree
a guy
that
who you could put him on the field and not get nervous about.
Okay, so
that's what I mean. He
probably is not going to be a day 3 pick at corner. You're probably not taking a corner on day 3 and then expecting him to step in day 1 and play well as a rookie. I mean, we kind of had those expectations a bit for Trey Hawkins.
John and I talked about
and he began his career, and it was a little rough to start.
I know, and I don't even know if he's in the picture anymore. But John and I talked about this the other day, that you could wind up on the back end of the summer signing a veteran
that too, yeah,
corner,
100%,
who you could put in a game and not sweat if need be.
100%.
So I didn't say it's got to be in the draft.
That's fair. Okay.
I simply said, what positions would you still like to see them get a body?
That's fair. I was just thinking in the draft. But I agree.
Don't keep your mind closed. Open your mind.
I agree that I do think adding a corner, maybe right before the start of training camp, similar to what the Giants did last year with Adoree Jackson, who came in and played solid football for them.
Oh, Leon Hall some years ago.
Yeah, so I do think veteran corner is a position where you
Fabian
can
Moreau.
Address it. Oh, I wish Fabian Moreau was still here. I agree that you can add a corner like that closer to training camp, a veteran.
Or you just take Travis Hunter.
The third position.
There you go, Pearson.
But the third position, it's not exactly, I'm not going to pin it down to one position, but I want to add another offensive playmaker. And I want this done as well on day 2, similar to like the defensive tackle. And now I don't care if you want to add another running back and, add that player to Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to address wide receiver and just give, Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, give them another, not going to say top tier wide receiver prospect, but a day 2 pick. Because there was a mock draft today that had the Giants taking Igbuka from Ohio State at 34. I would love that.
No kidding.
Love that. I don't think he's making it to the day 2.
I was going to say, he's not getting out of the first round.
I don't think so either. But in that scenario, I would love taking Igbuka in the second round.
He just ran 4.47, 4.48, right?
Yeah,
he's
big, and he's pretty big.
Yeah.
So whether it's running back, wide receiver, even a tight end, I would love to add a day 2 tight end and have him mixed in with Theo Johnson, Chris Manners as the blocking tight end. I mean, Daniel Bellinger, his playing time seems to have not really increased the last couple of seasons. I don't know.
All right.
What the long-term outlook is.
So you're going to
to
add an offensive playmaker ahead of a corner?
In the draft, yes. Just because.
Not draft. Just add.
I'm just thinking about the draft.
You can't just think about the draft because free agency is also part of this.
I understand, but it is a lot easier, as you said, to find a reliable veteran corner at the end before training camp than a tight end or running back or receiver.
You morphed the question, but that's okay. It's fine. It's fine. Point is, the team is not done. They've still got to add some more guys. And quite frankly, I would love to add a bulldozer into the running back room, but it's a lower priority for me. When I said top 3, I decided to keep it at top 3.
That's why I said playmaker, because of those 3 positions, running back probably would be number 3 of the running back, receiver, tight end in my priority list.
Or you take Travis Hunter.
Well,
I'll just say that again.
Pearson, you
meet a couple of your needs there.
You don't have to sell me on Travis Hunter. Believe me, you do not.
I wonder who Pearson wants.
We're going to try to make Matt very, very happy because we're bringing on Brent Hubbs, Tennessee Volunteers radio analyst, to talk about some of these Tennessee prospects that are going to be in the draft. And Brent, we wish you a very good day, and thank you so much for taking some time with us today.
Absolutely. Glad to be with you guys. Hope everything's nice in New York today.
A little chilly, but I will tell you things are heating up in here because Matt really wants to get an offensive playmaker, and I'm just going to skip past your top prospect and go right to Dylan Sampson, your running back, who I don't think anybody in the world would be disappointed to get their hands on, because when he gets to the NFL, he's going to make some things happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's more powerful than people give him credit for, given his size. I think he's a better playmaker in space in terms of being able to catch the ball. Now, he's not elite there right now. I think he can get better. He wasn't used a ton in that world at Tennessee. But the thing he's got is he's got a great feel for, for the run game, for holes and for pressing. He can play in a variety of run systems. I mean, he can be in a lot of zone stuff. He can be in some pin and pull stuff. He can run straight between the tackles. He's got quite a bit of diversity to his skill set as a running back, which I think is going to translate well to the NFL. He's a real hard worker. He's a guy with a chip on his shoulder. He's highly motivated. He's a great leader by nature. I mean, I think there's a lot to like about Dylan Sampson. And I think we're living in a world where a smaller back is not, quote, a detriment like it has been through the years in the National Football League, which I think Dylan is very happy to hear and believes it's going to help his stock ultimately in the draft.
Yeah, well, first off, Brent, I just want to say I hope you don't hold it against me, but I am a Vanderbilt graduate. So I have to say, you guys are obviously
did I just hear a click?
Rival.
Is there a click on the other end of the line?
Is this a joking show where we have a good time? Or are we very stoic
So
here?
just don't
because
hold.
I got a lot of jokes about a Vanderbilt guy doing a football broadcast.
Oh, I'm sure you do. So don't hold it against me. But
no, not at all.
So just sticking with Dylan Sampson, I guess what do you think led to this, significant breakout campaign this past season? Was it simply just a matter of him getting, expanded opportunity, or what do you think it really was?
No, I think it was his time. And Tennessee's got a new running backs coach in Darrell Sims, and Coach Sims did not change up necessarily schematics, but he didn't rotate backs as heavily as Tennessee did the couple of previous years when they had Jalen Wright and Jabari Small kind of splitting time. Dylan got the bulk of the work because behind him was some younger players, and I think Coach Sims is much more of a ride-the-hot hand type guy. So there was more opportunities for Dylan. And, again, Dylan had paid his dues. I mean, Dylan had good years his first 2 years at Tennessee. As a freshman trying to learn pass protection, his role was limited. That role grew his second year, and then his third year was his time. And he's heavier, stronger, more durable, and I think he's always been talented. It was just more about him getting to be the feature back for the first time.
Now, I'm going to kind of back end this, Brent, because we all know that James Pierce, your edge rusher, is your top guy coming out. But before we go to him, I just want to stick with the offense for a minute because you got two wide receivers who are totally different. I mean, you couldn't have a bigger contrast between Brew McCoy and Dante Thornton, who I think are going to wind up, maybe fourth round. They're going to be third-day guys. But I think they both have skill sets that are going to make them qualify for an NFL roster.
Well, I think the challenge for Brew is just going to be medical. And just where is he at from a physical standpoint? He has unfortunately been hampered by a hamstring that has really limited him from completing the Senior Bowl work down in Mobile. He didn't do anything at the Combine of note. He didn't do anything at Tennessee's Pro Day.
Is the ankle okay?
Hamstring.
How about the ankle?
The ankle's okay. He's been dealing with a hamstring, but because he has the ankle, the hamstring is a really big deal because you haven't seen him run so that the NFL people can look at the ankle and go, yeah, it's okay.
Gotcha.
He's got to prove himself to people. It's going to be a detriment to his draft stock. It's really hurting his draft stock. It's unfortunate. He's going to interview great with anybody that talks to him and visits with him. He's going to be great on the board. He's a physical player when healthy. He will block on the perimeter. He can body you up a good bit and use some of that with inside leverage on slants and things like that. It's just the medical is going to be a red flag, but because of the ankle injury that he had, which was a significant injury, and because of that, he's going to have to go prove himself and be drafted at a lower level than he would ever hope that he was going to be when he transferred in from Southern Cal to Tennessee. Dante Thornton, I think the questions are different for Dante. And with Dante, the question is, what is the diversity in his game as a receiver? When he was at Oregon, he ran a bunch of 9 routes. He was a straight takeoff guy. He was straight vertical, just a straight takeoff. That was his game. When he came to Tennessee, that was kind of the bulk of his game here. Now, he got into some over routes. They got into a little more comeback stuff with him. But I think the question everybody has is, here's a guy with great size. Here's a guy with really good speed. What does he do? Because when I turn on the tape, I don't see necessarily a complete guy. I see a very somewhat limited guy in terms of what his tape looks like, because it's a lot of deep vertical stuff. So what else can he do? And I think that's what the NFL is figuring out. I think he's a guy who's getting a ton of individual workouts because, as every scout will say, when I see that size and I see that speed, I got to look at it, right?
A traits guy.
Yeah, it's like it's a pitcher throwing a 95 mile an hour or 98 mile an hour fastball. Like, how much does it move? Does he have an off-speed pitch? Like, where is he as a complete pitcher? I can't ignore the speed of the fastball. You can't ignore the size and speed of Dante Thornton.
Right.
What you got to figure out is how far away is he from being a complete receiver.
Yeah, Dante has Paul's ideal, physical traits. Paul loves the skyscraper, 6'5", and the fact that he ran a 4.3 40.
How about 22 yards average per catch for his college career?
And this past season, he led the nation with 25.4 yards per catch.
I mean,
he takes the top off of a defense. But yeah, it's, I guess, whether or not he can really expand the route tree to more than just those go routes. Switching over now to that top prospect that Paul mentioned, going into this past season, James Pierce was, widely considered the likely number 1 pick in the draft for this year. Obviously, the season didn't go quite as well as, he would have hoped. I guess what really happened throughout the year that, makes you think that is why he's dropped now to being projected to the middle end of the first round as opposed to being the, projected top pick less than a year ago?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there was a little bit of a mixed review on him even a year ago. And PFF loved him, just loved him. He still does in terms of their notion. And they had him as the number 1 guy. Some other people had him as a top 10, some as a top 15, but a consensus first round pick. Mm-hmm. And that was because he had double-digit sacks. He could play in space, and he had a pick 6 in the bowl game. And I kind of likened him a little bit to, you could do some stuff with him a little bit like what the Cowboys have done with Micah Parsons. Not the same player, but some similar stuff. You could run him on stunts. You could line him up standing up. He can come straight off the edge. He can drop in coverage. There's some different things that he can do. He was the target of a lot of offensive game plans last year. So he got chipped. He got held. He got off to a bit of a slow start. He didn't finish the way he needed to. He got pressures, but he didn't finish the way that you wanted. I think there were probably some times where he was a bit frustrated and probably freelanced a little bit outside of kind of where you wanted him to be. A year ago, he had on the opposite side of him a guy by the name of Tyler Barron, who's on some draft boards. He transferred to Miami.
Yes.
And I think James missed Tyler. I think those were a couple of bookends that played off of each other pretty well. You go back and if you look at the tape of 2 years ago, there were times that they slid Tyler Barron inside, and he was a speed rush guy on the inside, and he pushed the pocket and made the quarterback move. And sometimes he moved into James Pierce's lap. Sometimes James moved the quarterback and made the quarterback step up into the pocket, and there's Tyler Barron. Those two played off each other pretty well. I do think James probably missed Tyler, and Tyler missed James. Probably didn't help either one of them's draft stock by Tyler Barron transferring away. But, I mean, James has got all the tools that you're looking for in what you want. You keep hearing this from coaches a little bit at Tennessee. It's been this way for a couple of years. Got to be a better pro, and I think he's got to manage himself a little bit better, and that's nutrition, and that's recovery, and that's all of those little things like that James needs to do a better job of. But there's no doubt his first steps is pretty elite. He's got great length. He's got more power than you wanted, than you think you would have. You just got to stay within the framework of what you want him to do and kind of not go freelancing. I think at times this past year, out of frustration, because the sack numbers didn't come right out of the gate for him, he probably freelanced a little bit too much.
Also on defense, Brent, there are two guys. We talked about the contrast in the two wide receivers that we mentioned a few minutes ago. Same thing along the defensive line. You got a couple of defensive tackles there. And again, these guys are late third-day picks. But what they do, if you find the role for them that utilizes their specific talents, Elijah Simmons and Omar Norman Lott, I think could offer something in a defensive line rotation.
Yeah, what's fascinating about those two guys is I don't know that either one of them are three-down guys.
Right.
And so where is your need, right? So Elijah Simmons is a plugger, big body guy who can control gaps and could be a nice real run stopper for somebody. He's got really, really good explosion. His biggest downfall at Tennessee, he had a hard time staying healthy. He dealt with some ankle issues on and off for the better part of almost 2 years at Tennessee. He can still dunk a basketball at 340 pounds, and he's not 6'6", by the way. I mean,
no.
he's got great explosion. Look at his vertical numbers at the combine, and you're like, wow. So there's explosion there. I think the question with him is, can he stay healthy? He went through some immaturity where he didn't manage his weight the way he should have, and wasn't committed to it 12 months out of the year the way he needed to be. But he was better this past year, and he had enough plays on tape that you went, wow, that guy puts it together. He's going to make some money in the National Football League. I think that's still the case with Elijah Simmons. I think he's very intriguing. I think Omar Norman Lott, I think the question with him is, can he hold up in the run game, because he can rush the passer from the inside. And I think Omar, when he is completely locked in and focused and dialed in, Omar Norman Lott's a good player and is going to make somebody happy, potentially in the National Football League. It's just both those players for different reasons have to be more consistent. Their lack of consistency is why they're sitting where they are in the NFL draft and not higher up the board. Had they been more consistent players, week in, week out, series in, series out, play in, play out, we would be talking about them in a different vein, because both of them have some real traits that you like at that level to stop the run and to rush the passer as inside guys.
So the last one for me, Brent. I know that the easy answer for one of them might be the quarterback position, but who is one guy on offense and one guy on defense to keep an eye on during the 2025 season, looking ahead towards next year's draft?
Well, the NFL's all enamored with tight ends, it feels like these days. Tennessee took a transfer from Alabama a year ago named Miles Kitselman, and Kitselman was basically a extra tackle at Alabama. JUCO player, came to Alabama, played as essentially an extra tackle, and didn't catch the ball. And so when Tennessee took him as a transfer, it was kind of an afterthought, like, oh, okay, here's a guy who's just going to be a depth piece. And he ended up being the third leading receiver on the team last year. And he is a more of a traditional kind of old school, a little bit of a throwback tight end. He can catch the ball. He can do some things down the field, but he can really play off the line of scrimmage on the ball and can really block well. I don't think he's a high draft pick, but I think he's going to be a guy next year that everybody's talking about, like, well, he's going to play in the league because the league's looking for those types of players. And so, he's the guy that jumps out to me right away. And, of course, obviously, where's Nico Iamaleava going to be? What kind of year does he have? He's got all the physical tools. Does he do some things maybe a little more consistently? Where is he at in development of his game? Because, again, he's got all the physical tools that you look at. So he's certainly going to be on some draft radars to see what kind of year he has as a second-year starter. If you look through Josh Heupel's history, second-year guys in his system seem to take off on offense. Whether it's receivers, whether it's a running back, whether it's a quarterback, they seem to take off there. And he can be a guy that I think can really take off in his second year as a starter. defensively, they got 2 more defensive tackles, and Bryson Eason, who's going to be, I think, a guy who has a chance to be a really solid player there who can be on some draft boards. At edge, they've got Joshua Joseph, who I think is going to have his best year this year. He's kind of been in the shadows behind James Pierce. Actually, from a production standpoint, numbers-wise, had as good, if not a better year than Pierce did this past year. I think he's ready to kind of go to a different level with his game. So those are a couple of defensive guys and a couple of offensive guys I would keep an eye on in this out of this program heading into the draft in 26.
Great stuff out of Brent Hubbs, the Tennessee Volunteers radio analyst. Brent, where can people find your stuff? Do you like to type things on social media, or are you a guy who kind of keeps it close to the vest?
No, we do things. I publish and manage a website called volquest.com. We've been doing it for 26 years now, and so we got a lot of stuff on there. A lot of stuff about the current players, if you like, sort of where they're at, and obviously guys get ready for the draft as well. We cover them from high school out of the recruiting ranks all the way through their arrival in the National Football League. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to check us out at our website. Again, that's volquest.com.
Terrific. Brent Hubbs, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the draft. Enjoy your summer. We'll talk to you again, I'm sure, at some point down the line.
Thanks, Brent.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
All right, there's the scoop on the Tennessee Vols. They got some guys who are going to make a 53 and help somebody. Again, some of these folks may be later on and maybe rotational players, but that's okay. If you make it into the NFL, it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, they have 3 guys that are most likely going to be day 1 or day 2 picks between Pierce, Sampson, and Norman Lott. And then those other guys probably sometime on day 3.
So, folks, before we send it out of here, Pearson, want to just get you back on mic real quick. Tell the folks what's on the Giants Huddle. I'm sure we have a whole bunch of new things coming up there this week.
Yeah, so there's tons of Russell Wilson content out there on Giants.com.
Gee, what a surprise. A lot of Russell Wilson.
We did a huddle, or it's his interview, essentially, with John Schmelk. We put that up yesterday on the Huddle feed. And then this morning, I put up Cameron Wolf from NFL Network. Who discusses Russell Wilson and some other things like Javon Holland and what he can bring to the team.
And we have a new Baldy breakdown on Russell Wilson that went up on Giants.com and YouTube this morning.
There you go. So, folks, if there's anything that you don't know about Russell Wilson, go to Giants.com, and we've got it all covered for you right there. And, of course, we'll be back tomorrow with a Big Blue Kickoff Live. And I believe we are talking about the Syracuse Orangemen.
Yes.
A lot of people in the metropolitan area are still Syracuse fans, as they have had a little bit of a resurgence.
Speaking of Orange, today is also opening day. My Mets start in 2.5 hours. Yankees start in 90 minutes.
3 o'clock for the Yanks, I think.
Yeah, and Mets are 4 o'clock.
Are they?
Yeah, in Houston. So you'll be rooting for us today,
I'm glad for the Mets that they're in a little bit of a warmer atmosphere than what we have here in New York today. It's a bit chilly and cloudy.
I wouldn't want to be out there.
Not particularly. No, it's not time to go to the ballpark and sit and watch a baseball game. Not quite yet.
But for those of you that are going, enjoy. Happy opening day.
Indeed. All right, folks, that'll do it for this edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. It is always presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. We will be back tomorrow, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, we will going to preview our Syracuse Orange Man prospects in the NFL Draft. 201-939-4513 is our phone number. For Matt Citak, I'm Paul Dottino. We'll see you next time.